And I'm interested in how kombucha works and how it works. Everyone's a little bit taller than I am. There we go. So, kombucha is basically a fermented beverage, and it lives, so you have to take care of it. One of the things that a lot of people like about it is it has recently found health benefits. Now, when you go to a hospital, what's the most common thing you see on the walls? It's those sanitizers, right? People are afraid of bacteria. They're afraid of getting sick, and I mean, it's a good thing to be wary about, because one of the things that brought us forward in humanity is sanitization, right? But we have bacteria as our flora and fauna, right? Like yogurt replenishes your flora and fauna naturally, you know? Especially when you take penicillin or other forms of antibacterials. They end up killing like things that live in you naturally, right? So this can also cause, you know, different health things. Some people, they get stomach aches just from not having the right bacteria to digest their food, right? So what I want sort of to emphasize is that kombucha has these properties, but it's living bacteria that you end up ingesting, right? So what it is mostly is it's a bacteria that lives with yeasts. It's called acetobacter. There's different strains of it if you're from Germany or Japan. Historically, it was found mostly in Russia. And it was a fermented beverage that you find in people's houses. They would share it. And one of the things that was interesting about kombucha was the tradition of actually giving away some of the kombucha. So it's very peculiar stuff. It's literally like a SCOBY. It's a symbiotic culture of organisms, bacteria, and yeast that lives on top of the juice, right? Now, you drink the juice once it's actually fermented and it's gone through its full process of changing the sugars into the kombucha substrate. So Russian women, mostly they would call it the daughter. And once 2 weeks had passed, they would take this daughter strain, which is another layer that was added on top to the SCOBY, and they would give it to their friends. So their friends could have these strains. And some of these strains are actually hundreds of years old, which is really interesting because you look at like the history of cheesemakers and stuff, and they actually have their own cheese strains in their in their villages, right? And that are totally unique to that region. So there's certain kinds of kombucha that are offered in Germany and in other forms. So one of the things that's cool about it too is it's if you look into any of the silk trade routes, it traveled along the silk trade routes. So it's sort of like gold and silver. It's a sacred, thank you. It's a sacred thing. Now just recently, Westerners, us in Western civilizations, we found it, and we found out that there's different things that it offers, right? You know, with analyzation of the acids, we started to come to a realization that there was other things being offered, not just bacteria cultures that are good for our immune systems, right? But other things such as gluconic acid. Now, that's a form of glucose that once it's synthesized, what it is good for is it's energy production. So it kind of gives your body this amazing boost, right? You're like, wow.
I'm a little sporadic today. I've never actually done a lecture before.
Very I'm not finished yet.
Okay. We were just clapping because you're awesome.
Huh?
We were just clapping because you're awesome.
Thank you. So, the symbiotic relationship between the bacteria and yeast, like I was saying, it's called acetobacter. Now, one of the things that's in kombucha is acetic acid. That's exactly the same thing we have in our stomachs, right? Or no, hydrochloric acid is in our stomachs. Acetic acid is vinegar, basically, right? So, if you've ever looked into like the history of cleaning, for instance, and sanitization, one of the things that they found out was that if you take vinegar and you clean your house with it, it kills bacteria. It kills things that spoil food, right? There's this thing called streptococcus, and what it is it's just a bacteria that produces toxins that make your food toxic, right? You get sick from it. Now, if you actually kill that from using acetic acid, then no more of those toxins are actually in your food, right? So it's a lot safer as a form of, I would recommend using vinegar over any cleaning substances, to be quite honest. because those are chemicals that we don't really have a history with. Vinegar's a little different, right? It's been around for thousands of years. So the yeast strains, like I said, they're usually regionally different. In North America, we'll have different kinds of yeast than we do have in Germany. Different strains, right? It's the evolutionary process that moves up. So acidic contents that are usually in the kombucha is up to 30 grams per liter. And that's a lot of acid. But it's actually good for us. There was a case of this one woman who actually died from acidosis because she drank really old kombucha and it proliferated her stomach. So you don't want to be eating or drinking kombucha that's been sitting around for too long, but don't be afraid of it. Just understand that it's a potent substance. So I wanted to talk about the sugar content. So you guys know what sugar looks like, you know what it tastes like, but do you know what's in it? There's carbon, there's hydrogen, and there's oxygen, actually. So when a bacteria wants to use something, it's transforming it, right? Now this is the kind of thing that really baffles scientists, is how you can take molecules that are bonded together so tightly, like sugar, and change them, right? You can dissolve them in water and that changes them, right? But to actually change ethanol into a useful substance, ethanol alcohol, right? That's what this bacteria actually ends up doing. Now kombucha is slightly alcoholic. It's got about a 0.6% of alcohol in it, but not to worry, it's good for you. It's sort of a natural thing, especially if you're of European descent. We've been drinking for most of our history, so not to worry. But anyways, so going back to the sugars, when you have sugars and you change their chemical compositions, you end up with things that are, I'm just so surprised that nobody knows what kombucha is. Okay, so there is people out here. So if I could describe it to you, first of all, it's kind of sweet, it's kind of sour, and it's fizzy, right? It's super bubbly, it's ridiculous. And it's a fight, like, you think about pop. Pop's been carbonated. It has carbonation added to it. But this is a naturally occurring carbonization, right? CO2. So carbon dioxide. So when you take a sugar molecule and you ferment it, what happens is it changes into ethanol and it changes into CO2. And hence beer, right? Beer is fizzy because that's exactly what the sugars do. They start to break down to their natural elements, right? So kombucha it's kind of in between a beer and a fermented, well, I don't really know. I really wish I brought one with me. But how are you guys feeling about learning how to make some? Yeah, okay, that sounds good. So if you go out and you go to, let's say, Community Natural Foods, not slashing them, they're so great, right? But one of the things is there's an American company called GT's Kombucha that makes kombucha. And active culture has not been pasteurized, so it actually has all the bacteria living in it. But it's up to $5 a bottle. And that's not very much that you're ending up spending a lot of money on, right? But the funny thing is that GT's is also exactly the kind of kombucha that you need to make it. One of the things that kombucha does is it gets sexy. It likes to breathe. So if you provide the kind of nice environment for it, you can end up with having kombucha forever. Forever and ever and ever. And ever. So what I would recommend is go out and look for some GT's kombucha. Try to find it wherever you can. Taste it first, see if you like it before you give it a life and then kill it. But and what you do is you use it as your starter culture. So does anybody know about sourdough bread? Yeah, cool. So sourdough is another example of something that lives and is food. It's a living food. Now sourdough culture it's almost like sourdough culture. Like, that is an ancient form of baking, really. Yeasts that can rise bread, but also can be kept alive over winter to keep Ukrainian families alive. That's quite impressive. So, that said, kombucha is another example of a fermented living thing. So, what you do, you guys have your notebooks out? Are you prepared? Not to worry, you guys can get on a mailing list too if you want to receive some real information that you can use later on that's in written form. Much more responsible than just spoken word. So you take the kombucha, and one of the things to remember is it's like a baby. You can't be giving it water that's too hot. You can't be shaking it, can't be dropping it. You have to be treating it like it's a living being, right? So you start with the kombucha. And then you you take teas. And what you need is black tea and green tea. and they must be organic. There cannot be any procedures that have happened because you can end up eating something that you potentially don't want to be eating. But, everybody's got opinions about that sort of stuff, so I'll pass that on. So what you do is you ferment, or you brew the tea for at least 24 hours. And that's a long time, but it becomes this really rich tea. Now, it's about 4 cups of tea that you need to start with. So once the tea is cooled, you put it into a jug. Let's say 4 liters, okay? So we've got our 4-liter jug here. So we got kombucha. Now we're gonna add 4 cups of tea. Awesome. Now you're gonna add 1 cup of granulated sugar. Now I like to use the regular granulated sugar because it's got so many molecules in it. It's not like a fructose or a glucose. They're different numbers of those carbon molecules, right? But you want to provide the most food for your baby, basically. So you add 1 cup of sugar. Just gotta make sure I'm giving you the right information here. Now the culture is very important. So once these mix together, you're gonna have sugar, you're gonna have tea, and you're gonna have your kombucha culture. Now I know a guy who's selling kombucha mothers. They're called scobies, symbiotic cultures of organisms, bacteria, and yeast, and they literally look like a pancake. But it's sort of more mucousy. It's really interesting, actually. I see your face. Have you seen them before? No, it's impressive. I want to look one up. I'm so sorry that I didn't actually have like a full-on presentation, but your imaginations, I can feel them. They're juicy out there. Anyways, so this guy's actually selling kombucha cultures. It's hard to get a hold of them. There's some places on Kijiji that you can find them, but he's actually a reputable guy. And he has a list it's sort of, it's a long waiting list if you all wanted one. But eventually we get one and it's well worth it. So once you have the culture, that's the liquid, the tea, and the sugar, then you put your SCOBY in, and then you're gonna top off the 4 liters with water, right? Now, a good thing to remember, if anybody here has actually been cultivating any kombucha, one of the things that I didn't know was that when you don't put enough water in, you end up with just vinegar. Like, it's really gross, yeah. Because there's not enough water to dilute the acetic acid. And I think the kombucha ends up just almost overproducing. And the SCOBY doesn't look as juicy, it's really weird. But anyways, you wanna make sure that you have ample water. I would say almost a ratio of 50-50 water. And anyways, wait 2 weeks, and you're gonna have kombucha done. And then the bottling process is important because you wanna make sure that you're not using any metal containers. Because metal has things like heavy metals in them. And these are very small trace elements, but when you take an acid and you add it to a metal, the first thing the acid does is it breaks down the metal. And you end up ingesting this in kombucha. It's not something that you want in your body because you'd have to, well, I don't even know how they would get rid of heavy metal poisoning. And I'm not even going to pretend that it's not good. So bottle it in glass bottles, in tightly sealed bottles. There's another thing that you can always add too. Kombucha is, it lives mostly off of juices. So cranberry juice is a really good thing to be able to add. There's some cranberry juice out there that's from concentrate. Try to find the stuff that's totally, So I'm really interested. Has anybody actually cultivated any kombucha here? Show of hands. Yes. That's wicked. That's good. Is it still living?
Yes.
That's really good. How did you get a hold of the mother?
A friend brought it to me.
Yeah, that's really wicked. Cool, cool. So what's your opinion on kombucha?
I like it. It's very flavorful.
It's the most interesting substance, and I would definitely recommend trying it. It is an acid though, so you don't really want to be drinking too much of it because your body works in a constant state of homeostasis. So what that is you're always healthy. I've talked to lots of doctors, they've got their own opinions because they've been taught a certain way, but your body is in constant state of health. So when you take too much acid, what do you think would really happen? Like, you need to balance it out, right? So the only base that's in your body is calcium, and that's in your bones, right? And your body, when it's in a state of acidosis, basically, takes that calcium out of your bones and makes them very brittle. That's also why people who drink a lot can break their legs and stuff. I'm one of those people. I have actually. So do use in moderation, but there's a lot of health factors that come into it, and one of them is actually increasing your cortisol in your body. Now, like, I've noticed that I just don't get colds anymore. I used to get like weird bronchitis every winter, and it was almost like the overuse of antibacterials just made it more susceptible for me to get sick. Recently, it hasn't been happening, but you know, I wouldn't attribute it to kombucha so much, but definitely don't get sick from having it. So anyways, any questions? Hey.
Hi. You were talking about the sugar. Can you use cane sugar instead of just white sugar? Because white sugar is not vegan friendly.
Yeah, negative. Well, you can use any sugars, literally. I've used dextrose before, but it doesn't ferment the same way. There's not as much carbon molecules. Cane sugar and natural sugars are definitely almost a better alternative. My recipe, I use white sugar just because it's accessible and it's cheaper for me, but definitely do use the cane sugar. There's another one that's, I think cane sugar comes in those discs, right?
You can get cane sugar that's just granulated, just like white sugar, but it's cane sugar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would definitely work. Anybody else? Hey.
So the primary benefit of this drink is
There's a lot of health claims out there. One of them is that it kills certain bacteria. I have them written down over here. Salmonella poisoning, or even, what's it called? Things that bother your stomach. It's largely salmonellas in the coli family. It actually kills them because this bacteria is fighting a war, if you think about it really. And you need to have the right kind of defenses to be able to handle the different kind of mutations that are out there. And because it's acetic acid, it does kill all sorts of forms of bacteria. I think I'm answering your question. I'm kind of tangenting, but I do have it written down. Sorry. Kombucha also inhibits the growth of forms of coli bacteria, lives in the digestive tract, and doesn't need oxygen. Very dangerous. Streptococcal, which is a food and skin-related bacterial toxin, and then strains of salmonella. And it does work off of inhibiting the growth by basically just melting them. Yep.
How often and how much of it are you drinking?
Well,
or is it more of a preventative measure, like when you feel something coming on?
It's not really a preventative measure. I drink it because I like it, but you can use it for so many different things. Like some people will even use it in their baths if they have skin problems, like rashes, because of the acetic acid. That's largely the health claim. Gluconic acid just is an energy booster. If you were really fatigued, or if you had like something that was going to happen to you that you need more energy, you could potentially use it for that form. Some people actually use it for cancer because it inhibits malignant cell growth, which is an interesting thing. Yeah. So you could use it preventively in the form of curing cancer. At the same time, you might want to go through chemo methods and be well guided by your doctor, right? But yeah, definitely. And beside you? No? Okay. Anybody else?
I was curious about the convention immune system, right? That seemed to be the first thing you mentioned.
Yes, the immune system.
Does that have any effects on the mind or mental performance, like clarity,
Mental clarity on the mind.
I found that a lot of those immune boosters have also had effects in the brain.
Very interesting. What kind of, so you're saying that it had a mental effect on you using immuno...
Oh, no, I haven't tried it personally.
Oh, okay, but not that, but immune supports.
Yeah, like things like herbs like reishi.
Okay. And what kind of effects did you have? Like, what was the...
Clarity, openness.
Clarity of mind?
Yeah.
So you felt that you were more clear or less clear?
Much more clear.
Much more clear. That's cool. I imagine that it's sort of a toxin thing. Our bodies, we retain a lot of toxins, and like exercise actually helps to deplete the amount of toxins that we can retain in our body because we're just regenerating so fast that we just can't keep them in there for too long. So it would also help, I think, in the mind because reishi mushrooms might have some effects of releasing toxins. But I'm not qualified enough to say. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. Cool. So is anybody interested? Is there any last questions? Oh, right in the back.
I just wonder if you cultivate it, how can you tell that you've done it correctly, that there is actually...
Oh yes, that's a good question. I will totally tell you about my first experience of kombucha. I made coffee kombucha. Oh my god, it was rank! It was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible. Like I had to like let that go and just start over again. There's definitely ways not to do it. The way that you tell that it's right and it's safe is that it's going to have a sweet and a sour, and it's going to be fizzy, right? It's not going to have any molds. There wouldn't really be, but if that happens, that contamination has, you know, a food particle could have fallen onto the SCOBY. And it has definitely acetic acid smell to it. And then you know it's good. Yeah. 2-week fermentation time is usually what it takes. Some people have their cultures turn over in 7 days. But as far as I know, yeah, that's ways to go. And of course, you can always try some different kinds and brands of kombucha and compare flavors, right? But I find that the water to tea ratio is really important. Yeah. Okay? Any last questions? Cool. So I am willing to take down emails, not to sell them to crazy places, but I can actually just pass along information on how to get in touch with a guy who will be able to give you a kombucha mother and or the information and a good recipe. So if anybody's interested, speak now, and I've just, and if you're not comfortable with that, that's okay too. I can give my email out as well. Oh, 3 in the back.